Hi, so following on from my video about seat post and seat setup, I'm actually going to give a little review of this Selle Italia SLR Max Gel Flow saddle. I've been riding this one now for about 6,000 kilometers, so I feel like I can actually do a review and not just an overview. So it's a fairly flat saddle across the top. There's not much scoop to it. It's got quite a large cutout running probably about 2/3 of the total width of the whole seat, and it's quite flat across the back as well, so it keeps its width in quite a broad flat section. Now this one I think has got TI titanium rails, so corrosion is not a problem, there's no paint to come off, and it also features these sort of blue silicone type, what they call silicone inserts, which are supposed to give the rails a bit of suspension. Now actually having this one apart, it's completely aesthetic. They don't do anything. Where the rails actually meet the carcass or the plastic base, there is really no extra padding given by the silicone. It's a bit of a gimmick. How does it ride? Well, I've got quite wide sit bones, so this saddle is quite a good saddle because it's wider than most at the back, and it holds its width quite nicely over the back. Now the downside to such a large cutout, well, the first downside is it puts all of your weight on your sit bones, which is a good and a bad thing, I suppose, because this is one of the only saddles which I've ridden for century rides where I don't experience any pudendal nerve numbness or any of the old chap numbness or anything strange going on down there. When I get home, you know, everything's still in good nick. No shrunken maggots or anything like that. But yeah, the downside of this is it does put an awful lot of pressure on your sit bones because you've got the same load going through basically a smaller contact patch, so your pressure in the sit bone area goes up. So you do get that hot sit bone or that sort of burning sensation on a very long ride, and if you're not accustomed to this saddle through many Ks, you may feel quite a burn if you only ride once a week, or you know, ride with the club once a weekend. Maybe this is not one for you. You might want a saddle with a bit more area to spread your weight and a bit more cushioning. Now the skin on this saddle is really tight over the base. It's bonded all around the edge, and the glue's held up really well. It hasn't really started to peel back. There's no staples that I can see, but it's held up well. But the downside of a really tight carcass across the top is that tension actually stops a little bit of the give, the natural give of the padding underneath, because as soon as you press down or make an indent into the top, you're actually putting the skin into more tension. It makes it's you know, if you're riding crits or some various quick circuit races, this is ideal. It takes the weight off the important bits of your giblets, and it's nice and stiff, so you can really get the power down. I've never had any problems with chafage. So in all, it's reasonably lightweight, it's reasonably cheap. I think you can get these for about £60. But if you're riding really long distances, you might want to get a little bit of a bigger contact patch for the rest of your bits, because for me it really does put a lot of pressure and quite a lot of pain into the sit bone regions. But then I guess you know that the saddle's doing its job, because you don't want to be sat on your reproductive bits. Now, as I mentioned, a couple of drawbacks with the cutout. The second one being that if you're a rider who likes to ride on the nose of the saddle quite a lot, or get very deep in the drops, or you like to get on the nose when climbing, being the cutout is so large, if you ride on the nose of the saddle, you really haven't got much material to sit on, and as a result of that, it does get quite painful if you're right on the nose of the saddle going up a hill or really deep in the drops, just because basically then you're sat on these two very thin ribs, and the pressure coming off those through the reduced area is quite high. So it's, I mean, it's not a saddle if you really like to get up front on it. I find it quite painful in that respect. And because of the cutout shape, saddles with cutouts, I find that they have to make the nylon or plastic base actually a little bit stiffer in the middle, because when they make the cutout they lose a lot of that skin tension in bending in that direction that they would have if they had a full base. So what they have to do is actually make the centre portion a little bit stiffer so it's not too squidgy up and down like that, and as a result of that you've then got even less area to sit on and it's even stiffer in the middle. So, you know, if you're going to sit on the back of this saddle all day and ride along on the hoods, it's fine. If you're trying to put your weight a little bit further forward on your pelvis and really rock onto some sort of your softer tissues, it does, for me, get a little bit uncomfortable.